This is to be asserted in general of men, that they are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Prince. There it is, one of the most ruthless assessments of human nature ever written, not as an opinion, but as a general rule. Machiavelli doesn't leave room for sentimentality. He doesn't soften the blow. According to him, if you put your trust in people's goodness, you're already making a mistake. And the uncomfortable part? He might be right. Think back. How many people in your life only stuck around when it was convenient? How many vanished when there was nothing left to take? We like to believe people are loyal, grateful, honest, but Machiavelli would tell you that belief is dangerous because people are rarely what they seem, and most aren't guided by morals. They're guided by fear, opportunity, and whatever benefits them most in that moment. This video isn't about how people should behave. It's about how they actually behave, especially when power, money, or survival is on the line. So, if you've ever been betrayed, manipulated, or caught off guard by someone you thought you understood, you're not naive. You're just looking at the world the way you wish it was, not the way it is. Machiavelli didn't write for dreamers. He wrote for those who wanted to survive and win, not in a perfect world, but in a brutal, unpredictable one. And in this world, he says, there's only one truth you can count on. Men are driven by necessity, and he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. Let's break it all down, one uncomfortable truth at a time. When Machiavelli said that people are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous, he wasn't venting. He was observing. He believed these qualities weren't rare defects in human character. They were the default setting. Strip away comfort, stability, and social expectations, and people will almost always act in ways that benefit themselves. It's not personal, it's instinct. Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. The prince. But love, as we'll see later, is fragile. Fear is effective, and behind both is one constant force: self-interest. People will stay loyal, so long as loyalty serves them. They will speak the truth, as long as truth doesn't cost them anything. And they will appear kind, generous, and moral, until the situation makes it more profitable not to be. Men are quick to change rulers when they imagine they can improve their lot. This isn't just about politics. It's human behavior in daily life. Employees who praise a boss when the raise is due, then mock them behind closed doors. Friends who ghost you the moment you're no longer useful. Lovers who leave when the conditions of the relationship no longer serve their needs. Even in war, Machiavelli observed this pattern. Alliances are formed not out of affection, but out of need. The moment one party grows weak, their allies scatter. Men are less concerned with injuring one who makes himself loved than one who makes himself feared. The painful truth is, kindness is often perceived as weakness, and people, consciously or not, exploit weakness when the reward outweighs the risk. Psychologists today might call this opportunistic behavior, or refer to evolutionary biases, but Machiavelli didn't use such terms. He didn't need to. He just watched how people behaved when the stakes were high, and realized they act for themselves. So, what does this mean for your everyday interactions? For the people you trust, love, and depend on? It means understanding that beneath every relationship is a delicate balance of needs, fears, and desires. People don't stay in your life because they should. They stay because, at that moment, it benefits them to stay. This isn't cynicism, it's clarity. And it explains why relationships that seem unbreakable can shatter overnight when circumstances change. Take a look at power dynamics in any relationship. Romantic, friendship, family. When loyalty clashes with self-preservation, most people will choose self-preservation. When truth risks punishment, most will lie. When kindness leads to loss, most will stop being kind. Machiavelli wasn't saying this to justify cruelty. He was warning us. Don't mistake civility for loyalty. Don't confuse politeness with integrity. People will play their roles, but if the mask slips, what's underneath is often self-interest in its rawest form. So the next time someone flatters you, supports you, or even loves you, ask yourself, what are they gaining from this? And what would happen if that gain disappeared? Because in Machiavelli's world, and in ours, motives matter more than words, and those motives are rarely pure. Consider how often relationships transform when the balance shifts. The friend who becomes distant after your promotion, the partner who loses interest when you face hardship, the family member who disappears when inheritance is settled. These aren't anomalies. They're patterns that Machiavelli recognized centuries ago. When the benefit changes, so does the behavior. But personal relationships are just the beginning. When we scale these principles up, When we look at leadership, organizations, and power, Machiavelli's insights become even more striking, because the rules that govern intimate relationships also govern empires. Just with higher stakes and fewer pretenses, Machiavelli posed a brutal question, one that still echoes through leadership seminars, political strategies, and relationship debates. Is it better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved? And his answer? It is much safer to be feared than loved, when one of the two must be lacking. Love is ideal, but fear is practical. Machiavelli wasn't encouraging cruelty. He wasn't glorifying tyrants. He was pointing out something uncomfortable. Love is voluntary. Fear is enforced. People can love you today and turn against you tomorrow, because love fades. It depends on emotions, memory, and convenience. But fear sticks. It creates boundaries. It makes betrayal cost something. Love is held by a chain of obligation, which, because men are wicked, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage. But fear is maintained by a dread of punishment, which never fails. He's not saying people never love. He's saying they love conditionally. They stay loyal when it's easy. They stay kind when they have nothing to lose. But remove the reward, or make betrayal tempting, and many will flip sides without blinking. This is why leaders who rely solely on goodwill often get blindsided. Men have less scruple in offending one who is beloved than one who is feared. For love is preserved by a link of obligation which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity. Fear creates a buffer. It doesn't require affection, just consequences. Now, this doesn't mean being cruel for the sake of it. Machiavelli warns that hatred is dangerous. A feared leader who avoids hatred is still secure. But a hated one is always vulnerable. A prince ought to inspire fear in such a way that, if he does not win love, he avoids hatred. This is a key distinction. The goal isn't to terrify. It's to be respected, to be seen as someone who cannot be taken advantage of. Consider how this plays out in modern leadership. The boss who is kind but firm maintains more respect than one who only seeks to be liked. The parent who sets clear boundaries raises more secure children than one who avoids all conflict. The leader who makes tough decisions earns more loyalty than one who tries to please everyone. In relationships, we tend to believe that love alone will keep people loyal, but Machiavelli would say that's naive, because when people have nothing to fear, when there are no consequences for betrayal, they often do whatever suits them. That's why a boundary, reinforced by consequence, does more than 100 kind gestures. Fear doesn't make people good, but it keeps them in check. And in a world where loyalty is rare and self-interest rules, being feared, not hated, is the safer bet. But power isn't just about managing relationships through love or fear. It's also about understanding a deeper truth, that human behavior isn't driven primarily by morality but by perception and results. And this brings us to perhaps Machiavelli's most controversial insight. We like to think people make decisions based on morals, right versus wrong, good versus evil. But Machiavelli tears that illusion apart. In the actions of men, and especially of princes, where there is no court to appeal to, one judges by the result. The prince. In other words, it's not whether something is good or bad that matters. It's whether it works. Machiavelli argued that morality is often a luxury, not a necessity, especially in high-stakes situations. When survival, power, or dominance is on the line, people will twist moral principles to suit their goals. A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything is bound to come to ruin among so many who are not good. In a perfect world, honesty, kindness, and loyalty would win. But in the real world, these traits can be dangerous, if not paired with strategy. Imagine a leader who refuses to deceive because lying is immoral. Meanwhile, their rivals lie, scheme, and manipulate their way to control. Who survives? Not the most righteous, but the most adaptable. This is what Machiavelli means when he says, a wise ruler ought not to keep faith when doing so would be against his interest, and when the reasons that caused him to pledge it no longer exist. It's not an encouragement to be heartless. It's a warning. If you're the only one playing by the rules, you'll be outplayed. Think about it. Politicians who switch sides after elections, corporations that preach ethics but outsource to factories with poor labor conditions, allies who abandon their values the moment profit or protection is on the line. In each case, moral language is used as a tool, a mask. But underneath, it's calculation. Machiavelli never said morals were useless. He said they were contextual, useful when they protect or strengthen you, disposable when they endanger you. A prince should appear to be all mercy, all faith, all honesty, all humanity, all religion, yet he should be ready to act otherwise if necessity requires it. This isn't hypocrisy, it's survival, because people don't judge morality consistently. They judge results. If you succeed, they'll excuse almost anything. If you fail, even your virtues will be criticized. So Machiavelli's advice? Be good if it helps. Be ruthless if it protects, but never cling to morality when it threatens your position. Because when power is at stake, most people will not ask, was it right? They'll ask, did it work? And this brings us to a critical question. If morality is flexible and results matter more than methods, then what truly shapes how people see you? What determines your success or failure in the world? Machiavelli's answer might disturb you, because it reveals how easily we are all deceived. In a perfect world, truth would speak for itself. But in Machiavelli's world, the real world, what people see matters more than what is. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. The Prince. That one sentence cuts through centuries of idealism, because people don't have time, or the desire, to understand you deeply. They go off first impressions, surface behavior, curated images. In Machiavelli's eyes, success isn't about being virtuous. It's about looking virtuous. A prince must be a great pretender and dissembler. This wasn't advice for actors. It was a playbook for survival, because appearances shape perception, and perception shapes power. Be seen as decisive. Even if you're uncertain, be seen as generous. Even if your wealth comes from cruelty, be seen as just. Even if your system is rigged, because most people can't, or won't, dig deeper. Machiavelli didn't trust the public's ability to detect truth. He believed people are drawn to spectacle, to symbols, to well-crafted illusions. Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. This principle applies everywhere. Politicians smile and speak of unity, even as they sow division behind closed doors. Companies boast about sustainability, while exploiting cheap labor. Influencers post flawless lives while crumbling off camera. None of this is accidental, it's strategy. And Machiavelli saw it centuries ago. He warned that those who insist on always being sincere will be overpowered by those who simply appear sincere. It is not necessary for a prince to have all the good qualities, but it is necessary to appear to have them. To succeed in a world that values image over essence, one must learn the art of presentation, not because truth doesn't matter, but because truth isn't always visible. People are more likely to trust the confident liar than the anxious truth-teller. They follow the bold, not the accurate. They remember how you made them feel, not whether you were real. So Machiavelli's message is simple, but chilling. Control your image, or someone else will use it against you. But controlling perception isn't just about crafting an image. It's about understanding what truly drives human behavior at its core. And this brings us to Machiavelli's insights on the emotional levers that move people to action. According to Machiavelli, people are not governed by reason. They are governed by hope and fear, two powerful forces that make them predictable and controllable. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. The prince, he understood that most people don't seek truth, they seek comfort. And comfort often comes in the form of hopeful lies or terrifying threats. If you can control what people hope for, or what they fear, you can shape their actions without ever touching them. No need for chains, just the right illusion. A ruler, for example, doesn't need to fulfill every promise. He just needs to keep people hoping that he will. And if hope fades, he replaces it with fear. Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. But as Machiavelli argued earlier, love is fickle, hope is fragile. Fear, however, is immediate and reliable. This is why he believed fear was the more effective lever. But when used with finesse, too much, and people revolt. Too little, and they forget the consequences. A skilled manipulator doesn't dominate through brute force. They manage emotions. They give just enough hope to avoid despair, and just enough fear to maintain obedience. This principle applies far beyond politics. In marketing, customers are promised happiness and warned of missing out. In relationships, people stay not because of deep affection, but out of fear of loneliness or hope for change. In the workplace, employees tolerate toxic environments because they hope for promotions or fear unemployment. People often accept suffering as long as they believe relief is coming. They will endure injustice if they believe justice is near. But remove hope entirely, and rebellion begins. Remove fear entirely, and chaos spreads. This is why those in power carefully balance the two. Machiavelli's insight was that emotions are levers, not side effects. Leaders, lovers, and manipulators all pull these levers to engineer behavior. Because when people act irrationally, it's not because they lack intelligence, it's because their hope is being fed. or their fear is being stoked, and the one who controls those forces controls them. Understanding emotional manipulation brings us to a crucial question. Can true loyalty exist in a world driven by self-interest? Machiavelli's answer reveals why so many allegiances crumble when circumstances change. Loyalty sounds noble, but in Machiavelli's world, it's rarely unconditional. Scratch the surface, and it often comes down to benefit. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. People may swear loyalty with words, but their true allegiance lies with their self-interest. And as soon as your power, money, or influence disappears, so does their loyalty. Men are less ashamed of being faithless than of being cheated. This quote reveals something deep. Most people don't feel guilt when breaking loyalty. They feel anger when they are betrayed, but don't mind doing the betraying. So what keeps people loyal? Incentives, threats, convenience, not values. Machiavelli observed that the masses follow those who serve their needs. If you feed them, protect them, flatter them, they will support you. But if someone else promises more, they will shift without hesitation. The promise of loyalty is forgotten when it no longer serves interest. This wasn't just political analysis, it was a universal rule. In business, employees stay loyal until a better salary appears. In relationships, loyalty can fade when affection is replaced by resentment. In politics, allies become enemies the moment the balance of power shifts. To Machiavelli, loyalty is a transaction, and it must be maintained with constant attention. He warned against trusting blind devotion. Instead, he advised rulers to buy time, not faith, by rewarding allies, punishing betrayal, and staying useful. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. This ties directly back to loyalty, because when love fades, fear remains, and a ruler who inspires fear will maintain control, even as loyalty erodes. That doesn't mean cruelty. It means understanding that loyalty is fluid, and preparing for the moment it shifts. The biggest mistake a leader can make, Machiavelli argued, is to assume that loyalty is earned once and for all. In reality, it must be negotiated again and again, especially when the winds of power change. So if you want to keep people loyal, don't appeal to their hearts. Appeal to their interests, or their fears. Because in Machiavelli's world, loyalty isn't eternal, it's rented. But if loyalty is merely transactional, how do leaders maintain control over those whose loyalty might shift? The answer brings us to one of Machiavelli's most sophisticated insights: how control is most effective when it's invisible. Most people claim to love freedom, but according to Machiavelli, what they really want is stability, certainty, and someone to make the hard decisions for them. They want control, just not the kind that's obvious. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. Machiavelli understood that the average person doesn't want to carry the burden of leadership or constant decision-making. They want to believe they are free, while quietly benefiting from structure and order imposed by someone else. This is why rulers can maintain power by disguising control as protection, not through open domination, but by giving the illusion of choice. Men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who deceives will always find someone who will let himself be deceived. Control wrapped in the language of safety is more palatable. You don't say, "You must obey." You say, "This is for your own good." It's not restriction, it's guidance. Not rule, but recommendation. This tactic is used everywhere. Governments frame surveillance as national security. Tech companies design addictive platforms, but call it user-friendly engagement. Managers micromanage, but label it mentorship. The trick is to never make people feel powerless, even when they are. Machiavelli believed that most people would rather feel in control than actually be in control, because real control comes with responsibility, and responsibility brings risk. And if someone else can carry that risk for them, quietly, efficiently, invisibly, most will accept it. But there's a line: push too far, control too visibly, expose the illusion, and rebellion brews. That's why Machiavelli advised rulers to manage control through optics and theater, not force. It is necessary to be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The fox is subtle, the fox hides intent, and people are more willing to follow the fox than the lion, if they don't know they're being led. So in Machiavelli's view, successful control is not about domination. It's about designing an environment where people willingly walk the path you've already laid out. And if they believe they chose that path on their own, then you've mastered control. Each of these principles, from fear to loyalty to control, reveals fragments of human nature. But Machiavelli's ultimate insight ties them all together, showing us why his observations remain relevant centuries after his death. Machiavelli's most powerful insight wasn't just about rulers or strategy. It was this: men are still the same as they were. They have always been governed in the same manner, and they always will be. Discourses on Livy. Across centuries, cultures, and civilizations, human nature remains constant. What changes are the tools and technologies, but not the instincts that drive us. We still crave power, fear loss, envy success, betray when convenient, and obey when afraid. The faces change, the games evolve, but the players, always the same. Men are more ready to offend one who desires to be loved than one who wishes to be feared. It's not just about politics. These principles apply to families, workplaces, relationships, and communities. Everywhere humans gather, the same patterns unfold, because they're built into us. And here's what makes this insight so unsettling. If you understand that people are predictable, you can shape them. You can anticipate betrayal, manufacture loyalty, inspire obedience, or create rebellion, not through luck, but through knowledge of what never changes. Machiavelli didn't try to change people. He accepted them. He observed without illusion. And that's what made him dangerous and timeless. Where others preached morality, he focused on reality. Where others asked how people should behave, he described how they do behave. He who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. We like to believe we've evolved, that modern life makes us wiser. But scroll through the news, open any history book, or reflect on your own choices, and you'll see the same mistakes, the same strategies, the same impulses, just wearing new clothes. Machiavelli's work remains relevant because people remain the same. That's the uncomfortable truth. And that's what makes his insights so powerful, because they apply not just to others, but to you. Understanding these patterns doesn't mean you must exploit them. It means you can recognize them, prepare for them, and perhaps, occasionally, rise above them. But first, you must see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. Because as Machiavelli knew, the truth, even when uncomfortable, is always your strongest ally, and illusions, even comforting ones, will always be your greatest vulnerability. So next time you find yourself surprised by betrayal, manipulation, or human nature at its rawest, remember, Machiavelli warned you.